Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Dynasty Lessons Learned. We are looking at the past Week 3 slate of games with a lot of good performances, great performances from some people who were underperforming the first couple of weeks. We have some more bad performances, a lot of things to kind of discuss as we are starting to really form some patterns and trends for a lot of how these players are going to perform for 2025. So obviously, values are getting shaken up and down. We have some potential buy lows, some rebuilding targets for players that aren't doing well, some really good contender targets and stuff. So we're starting to formulate a lot gather a lot of information for the 2025 NFL season. Now that this week 4 is pretty much going to be 25% of the season. I don't know where this time is going, but it moves quickly. So let's get into the games. We can start with the Thursday night game between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. It didn't feel like it was a close game, but it actually ended up kind of being a close game. The Miami side of it is kind of easy just because Tua isn't really all that good. Threw a really rough interception at the end of the game. Tyreek and Jalen Waddle both scored. Ollie Gordon had the opening touchdown. That wasn't Devon Achane. Achane still kind of got there through the receiving game. He had 16 fantasy points overall, 10 of which came from his 7 receptions. Then I'm still salty about the one of his screen dump-off passes from Tua was scored as a rush attempt, not as a reception. So maybe when it's, I think Wednesday they do stat corrections, so I'm very curious to see if they actually do that. That ball looked very forward, but they counted it as a rush attempt. It was like a 7 or 8 yard reception screen pass that they counted as a run play. So whatever, I'm not salty. I didn't lose money on betting on it. Anyway, I think this is just Miami, pretty much. I've said this like 3 weeks now in a row. I think that Achane is going to be good just because he can kind of survive on his own with the rushing attempts and the receiving volume that he has. And then if he finds the end zone, that's just a really good week. Tyreek and Waddle can be good, can be bad. It just kind of depends on what Tua is doing. They both had pretty solid games. 14 fantasy points for Waddle or 15 fantasy points for Waddle, and then 16 fantasy points for Tyreek Hill in PPR formats. But it's that was a lot of without those touchdowns, they're both under or at 10 PPR points, which isn't good. So I continue to want to sell Tyreek Hill and sell Jalen Waddle just because of the situation that they find themselves in. I understand a lot of people might be interested in Waddle for if Tyreek gets traded, and I understand that, but I think Tua is just not really the answer, and they can't really get out from under that contract. I think McDaniels is going to be fired, and it's just a really rough situation in Miami, and the offensive line is also garbage. So I'm not really in on anything going on in Miami outside of Devon Achane, and even him, I'm pretty on board with trying to trade down from because he's a top 6 or 7 fantasy running back, but I don't think his production is all that different than a lot of other guys that you could possibly get. So you could trade down, get some extra assets on top, especially if you are competing. What do you got to do to go from Achane to Josh Jacobs or Achane to James Cook would be phenomenal. I don't even know if you can do that anymore. But if you believe in like Kenneth Walker, Achane to Kenneth Walker, then what can you get on top of that? Might even be a borderline first, depending on Kenneth Walker's value. And if that manager's happy to get out from him, but I'm not opposed to keeping Devon Achane. I think he's great, but I also think that you could explore trade down options to get other assets, especially if your roster is a little injured right now, based on all the injuries that we had the past 2 weeks. If you're missing a player and you have Devon Achane, trading him down to another running back that's very productive, that has RB1 ceiling, but then getting an additional asset on top that could help you compete could be the way to go. On the Buffalo side of the ball, Josh Allen, phenomenal. James Cook, phenomenal. Josh Allen's passing success this week translated over to Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir. Keon Coleman, for the second week in a row, has not delivered, which really sucks because I kind of thought that week 1 performance would be, obviously he wasn't going to do like 8 for 120 and 1 every single week, but I thought it was a little bit more prescriptive of him being the more go-to wide receiver 1 guy, and that just hasn't really been the case 2 weeks since. I did give him a pass last week because I thought maybe that he would have gotten sauced and they didn't need to throw against the Jets. And I'm wondering maybe there's a little bit of that kind of coming into play here because of James Cook's performance, and then Dalton Kincaid just found some success. Shakir got the late touchdown, but I think I was a little bit too confident in raising Keon Coleman's value based off of one game, and it might be coming back to bite me if he's actually not that type of a wide receiver. So it might still just be difficult. Josh Allen and James Cook are fantastic. They're great. Kincaid maybe could be something. He's not a bad tight end start depending on your other options that you have. Shakir is just kind of like a flex option. Coleman seems to be like a flex option, and that's basically it for the Buffalo Bills and for this game. Pretty easy. Speaking of another pretty easy game, this Vikings-Bengals game ended up being a massive, massive blowout. I mean, we can talk about the Vikings side first because they were the winning side. Jordan Mason looked phenomenal and probably could have kept going. They basically benched everybody for like the last quarter, essentially. All these guys only played about 75 to 80% of the game. So it could have been even better had Cincinnati actually kept up, but they weren't able to. So we got great games, but could have been even better games. Jordan Mason is going to be great, I think, for the next few weeks as Aaron Jones is on IR. He was a major, major start for John Paulson on 4 for 4 this week. And that paid out dividends. He was in my DraftKings lineup, which helped a lot. So Jordan Mason, I think, is if you had him and you held on to him from last year and held on to him through the summer when him getting traded to Minnesota, it's paying out for you for sure. He is a weekly must start with Aaron Jones off the field. So play Jordan Mason. Carson Wentz looked pretty good. I was actually really happy to see this because some people kind of gave me some crap for still being happy about Carson Wentz being in the NFL. He had 170 yards and 2 touchdowns on 20 pass attempts, 8.7 yards per attempt. Jefferson did pretty well, 5 for 75. Hawkinson reemerged, 5 for 50 and a touchdown. This was everything that you wanted to see from the Vikings passing offense. We just didn't see enough of it because they were winning so easily the entire game, and Jordan Mason was just running all over Cincinnati. So I'm very encouraged by what I saw from Carson Wentz. I'm very encouraged by what I saw from Jefferson and Hawkinson, to where I don't think it's out of the question that if Wentz does well next week, and if he's a starter in 2 weeks in week 5, that it might be possible that they just kind of keep playing Carson Wentz and let JJ McCarthy really fully get healthy, and then maybe even sit for a little bit, just for like a week or two. I'm not like, this isn't like, oh, you're benched like Bryce Young was last year for Andy Dalton, but it's just, you know, if that injury is kind of a thing and they are still winning, I wouldn't want to shy away from that necessarily to go back to JJ McCarthy just because you think that JJ McCarthy is your franchise quarterback. Like, if he's not that right now, and for, you know, all but one quarter of his career so far has shown you that he's not necessarily that guy right now, like, why would you just not continue playing Carson Wentz if Carson Wentz is producing well and you're winning games? So that's just my personal take on it. I wouldn't be shocked if Carson Wentz has a little bit of staying power over the next few weeks, and maybe that is good things for Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, like we've seen here, and then Jordan Mason, obviously without Aaron Jones, can be great with or without Wentz in the lineup. So that's Minnesota. Pretty easy overall because the guys are the guys, and we love to see it from from this lessons learned kind of video. It's there's not much to talk about there. On the Bengals side of the ball, boy, I mean, we all believed that Jake Browning could just come back in and do what he did in 2023, and maybe he still can. I mean, the Vikings defense, for the most part, has been very, very good this year. They held Caleb Williams in check for all but basically their first scripted drive, and they're just, you know, the defense is very, very good under Brian Flores. So it might just be that kind of a situation, but also I'm not inspired by anything that I saw. I mean, Jake Browning, 5 yards per attempt, 2 interceptions, which we know is going to happen with him because he just likes to throw the ball. 140 yards, 50 of which went to Jamar Chase. Another, 26 went to Fant, 20 went to Sample, who caught the touchdown. T. Higgins only had 1 catch on 2 targets. That it's just, obviously you're not trading away Jamar Chase, but I do think that T. Higgins is kind of on the chopping block right now. If you are a contender and you were banking on him being more like what he was last year with Joe Burrow, and now without Joe Burrow, he's kind of not really it. he might be a player that as a rebuilder, you might want to go try to see if you can buy low on by being able to flip contending assets over to get T. Higgins. And vice versa, if you're a contender and you had T. Higgins and you're 2-1, 3-0 right now, you might want to consider trading him for more win now pieces. Like T. Higgins for Davante Adams, or maybe Davante Adams in a second. That doesn't sound like an impossible deal right now. Or Keenan Allen and a second for T. Higgins. Those don't sound like Quentin Johnston and a second. Like those don't sound like impossible deals right now, to where the rebuilder benefits by getting a player who may not be productive for the remainder of the year because he's lost his starting quarterback, but for the future could be really good whenever they're ready to compete next year, or if they wanted to flip him for an ROI benefit when he starts producing next year to then help their rebuild even more. But then you as a contender, you're getting an actual wide receiver who's going to produce for the remainder of the season, it feels like, and at least in terms of volume, quarterback talent, like those are on the Justin Herbert, Quentin Johnston, Davante Adams side, where it's not on the T. Higgins side right now. So I don't think that those trades are necessarily out of the range of possibilities on either side, and it might be something that you want to be looking at, whether you're competing or rebuilding, if you want to buy or trade T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, you just ride it out. Jamar Chase it's phenomenal. I mean, if you want to move him over to Amon-Ra or I was going to say CeeDee Lamb, maybe still CeeDee Lamb whenever he comes back from injury. But like, if you want to move Puka, if you want to move Jamar Chase over to Puka, sure, you can do all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't be just selling just to sell Jamar Chase because he is still a top 2 dynasty top 3, maybe dynasty wide receiver, depending on where you have Puka. But yeah, as for Chase Brown, I'm so sad because I was so in on Chase Brown in all formats, and dynasty, redraft, best ball, all of that kind of stuff. I was massively, massively in on Chase Brown. The one benefit that we're seeing is that he's still the leader in carries, though that's not translating to anything. He had 10 carries for 3 yards. He did have 4 receptions on 5 targets, which on paper you like to see, but then when you actually watch the film and then you see where Chase Brown is getting these targets, they're just like these dump off, like, oh, save me, Chase Brown. Like I'm getting chased by, a linebacker or a D lineman, and Jake Browning's just like, save me, Chase Brown. I don't want to get hit. You get hit. And so he just kind of dumps it off. Chase Brown catches the ball at the line of scrimmage, turns around, immediately gets tackled, kind of thing. And like, that's why he only has 4 yards per reception this week. In terms of what's going on with him in the rushing category, and why he's being outproduced by Samaje Perine and Taj Brooks on half the carries, Chase Brown, I saw a fantastic film breakdown from somebody on TikTok. I don't remember who it was. It wasn't a person that I actually knew, but it was a phenomenal breakdown, basically saying and discussing that Chase Brown's utilization in this offense this year has been horrendous. He has a massively high percentage of runs up in the A gap, which is basically, on either side of A and B gap, either side of the center. And for a running back like Chase Brown, who's like 5'9", 205, why are you running him just straight up the middle? And why are you not utilizing him and his speed and, his versatility and all that stuff on the outside and getting him, outside the tackles, or at least getting him into the C gaps and get him outside more to let him run and then work in space, outrun past the D line, get him in the secondary there. And then why are we not utilizing him as a better receiver out of the backfield? He showcased that was a massive strength of his last year. It was a strength of his coming out of college as well. Why are we not utilizing him better in those regards? And so that's something that really scares me for Chase Brown's usage this year, is because, defenses, like we saw it with Minnesota this week, he has his percentage of runs with 8 men in the box has doubled this year from last year. I believe he was at 26%. He's up over 50% this year. So defenses are not concerned about the passing game. They're even less concerned about the passing game with Jake Browning. They're daring them to throw because they know that he can just throw as many interceptions as they want as well. So when you're not scared of your passing offense, you can load the box, and then that's why Chase Brown has negative rushing yards before contact. So far, there's 2 running backs that have it. We'll get to the other one here very, very soon because it's the same thing's happening to him. And so that's why, like, I am scared of Chase Brown. And if you can sell him for a different running back, great. But at the same time, like the usage is still there. I think he's averaging half of the fantasy points per game than compared to his expected points per game. His actual points per game is like 9. His expected points per game based on his volume is like 17 or 18. So he's half as efficient or productive as what he should be given the volume that he is receiving. It's just that this Bengals offensive line is straight trash. Jake Browning doesn't appear to be all that great, which we knew he's a backup in the NFL for a reason. He's no Joe Burrow, but to not even be a competent quarterback in this matchup is going to be tough for Chase Brown. So, I mean, I'm taking my lumps on this one hard, but I just don't know what to do with them. I don't know where do you go if you have Chase Brown? What are you trading him for? Like Chuba? Are you trading him for Pollard and a pick, Kamara and a pick? You're going to have to add something pretty heavy to him to go over and get even to like Kenneth Walker or Josh Jacobs or, I mean, at this point, you'd have to add probably a first to Chase Brown just to get to Judkins or somebody like that. Maybe you move Chase Brown for a rookie. Maybe it's, you try to go over to Henderson or you try to go over to RG Harvey, who's being underproductive right now. And you just hope things are better for the rookie who has a much longer leash than Chase Brown, who's already, 25 years old and on the third year of his rookie contract. So maybe that's the way you go and you just kind of say, screw it. And you're kind of off of Chase Brown. But I want to say there's better days ahead. But I just don't know if there are. And it really, really sucks because this whole Bengals offense was supposed to be good. And now they're not because they lost Joe Burrow. In a not much better game, honestly, I don't know how the Steelers won this game. For those of you that don't know, so I live in central Pennsylvania. I go to a sports bar basically every Sunday with my friends to watch all of the 1 p.m. games, like the first round of afternoon games. And so being in central Pennsylvania, when you go to a sports bar, most every single TV has a Steelers game on it. So we were watching a TV that had the Steelers game. The Eagles game was right next to it. Then we had like the Browns-Packers game, and we had another game or two kind of around us. But most of the TVs around us had the Steelers game. And then the speaker system in the restaurant is tuned into the Steelers game as well. So I heard everything that the announcers were saying and was going on. And I'm so underwhelmed by Aaron Rodgers and this Pittsburgh Steelers offense because Aaron Rodgers is not what he used to be, which we knew, but like he's mobile enough to where like he's not Joe Flacco, but still like it's not anything phenomenal. Like he's dumping it off to Jalen Warren 5 times. DK Metcalf is only getting 4 targets. Calvin Austin's catching a touchdown. Metcalf at least caught a touchdown too, which was another great, bullying kind of touchdown. But I'm so underwhelmed by the Steelers offense that I don't really know what else to say about it. Like just hold on to DK Metcalf for sure. I mean, if you want to trade him for somebody else, then sure, maybe somebody who's younger. I still think Jalen Warren is a good buy right now just because he's getting a bunch of volume. And he's had 12 PPR points again, 8 through the air and then another 4 or 5 through the ground just because he's getting all the volume. So Jalen Warren is good. Like if you had Chase Brown and you wanted to flip Chase Brown for RJ Harvey and then you still wanted to replace because obviously you can't start RJ Harvey, but then maybe you go and you pay a second round pick for Jalen Warren to replace your Chase Brown, starting RB slot. That I think would work out. Like I think Jalen Warren is a very solid, like you lost James Conner, go get Jalen Warren. You need a little bit of extra depth, go get Jalen Warren. You have an underproductive Chase Brown. Or another underproductive, like a rookie that you thought might do well, like RJ Harvey, and they're not doing anything, and you need some production, go get Jalen Warren. That, to me, is what he is. The ceiling isn't high, but the floor is at least there, and I think he's going to be the starter for most, if not the remainder of the year, because Caleb Johnson was a healthy scratch, and I don't know what he has to do to get out of that doghouse that he's in right now from both Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith. I don't know what he has to do in practice short of a Jalen Warren injury for him to actually be activated. Trey Sermon was active for this game instead of Caleb Johnson, which is kind of funny because Caleb Johnson seems to be taking the Trey Sermon path. And now he's being replaced by that same player. So, but yeah, that's at least Pittsburgh. Like I hate every minute of watching this offense. And I'm so uninspired. On the Patriots side of the ball, Drake May was pretty solid at 260 yards and 2 touchdowns, 45 rushing yards as well. So Drake May, I think, was a top 7 or 8 quarterback on the week. So that was pretty solid. Hunter Henry was massive. Every single time I watched the Patriots, drive, I was like, oh, Hunter Henry caught a pass. Oh, Hunter Henry caught a pass. I would look over. I'd be so happy that A.J. Brown did something. I'd look back over to the Steelers TV. Hunter Henry caught a pass. He was just a monster. And I mean, in terms of like stability for Drake May, I think it makes sense. Just like Hunter Henry might be a very good buy candidate for the tight end position because the most success he had in New England was in the Josh McDaniels system that he's now back in. He's outside of Stefon Diggs. He has the most NFL success and stability and production. That's Hunter Henry outside of Stefon Diggs. Diggs doesn't look to be doing anything right now. Like if you were counting on him for wide receiver 2 production, like what we had seen last year in Houston, I don't know if he's still recovering for the ACL injury or if he's just not getting integrated into his offense, but you can't start Diggs right now. He's a player that maybe you want to try and see if you can get off of to go get a younger option who maybe has better ceiling, obviously just because they're younger. I'll try to think of a player as we go through here. Maybe if I see some more names, I can think of somebody later for Diggs. But it seems like it's just Hunter Henry. As for the running back room, Ramondre Stevenson, they wanted to use Ramondre Stevenson. They came into this game and said, Ramondre Stevenson, you are our starter. And then he fumbled away the first time. And then they kind of went to Antonio Gibson a little bit, but then they kind of went back to Ramondre Stevenson. Then he fumbled on the goal line. So he should have had a touchdown in this game, and that would have made his day a whole lot better. But he fumbled, and then they said, all right, screw you, we'll go to Antonio Gibson. Then Antonio Gibson fumbled. They said, all right, screw you, we'll move off of him, and then we'll finally plug in Travion Henderson. And then Drake May fumbled. He was strip sacked. So it was a really comical kind of game for the New England Patriots to where that's why I said, like, I don't know how the Steelers won this game. Like, Stevenson should have scored on that goal line carry, and then they had 3 other fumbles lost, 1 other by Stevenson, 1 by Gibson, and then 1 by Drake May, to where, the Patriots should have won this game, and then Travion Henderson should be used so much more than what he is, but they just keep wanting to go to Ramondre, and they keep wanting to go to Antonio Gibson. I get that Henderson wasn't all that great for this game. I mean, he had 3 catches for 19 yards, which is fine, but the receiving or the rushing volume was kind of there, but then the efficiency wasn't really there. I don't know how, if you're in New England, you just don't continue just giving Travion Henderson opportunities to succeed. Like, you saw it all in the preseason. You've seen it all in college. You drafted him like top 35 overall for a reason. Just give the dude a shot. Ramondre is not a bad running back, but just give Travion an opportunity. And I would like to say that hopefully that opportunity comes in week 4, but I'm just not entirely sure. And if you still have, or if you're still holding out hope for Travion right now, in terms of should you be able to start him in your lineup, I don't know if I'd start him in week 4, but hopefully the arrow is pointed up for him because of all of the fumbling issues for Ramondre, and then Gibson's just not really anything special either. Travion is the long-term answer in his backfield. I still believe that to my core. We just need to get him the opportunities, man. Come on, Vrabel. Colts and Titans, another relatively easy blowout game. Jonathan Taylor is phenomenal. I talked about this in my 4 for 4 buy video that Jonathan Taylor might be on his 2024 Saquon Barkley stretch right now, to where he might just be that freaking insane for fantasy football. And if you're able to somehow buy Jonathan Taylor right now, like if you could trade Saquon plus for Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty, do that. If you can move from Achane to Jonathan Taylor, whether that's straight up, whether it's Achane in a second for JT in a third, like I'd probably do that. Like I seriously think that Jonathan Taylor is in for a monumental 2025 campaign, because he's not only is he doing this through the ground, and he scored 3 times this game, and he's had like 3 other goal line touchdowns vultured by Daniel Jones. But another positive with Jonathan Taylor is that he's seeing targets. It's not anything crazy. He's on pace for, I believe, 51 targets on the year. He's basically averaging 3 per game, which isn't crazy, but we have not seen Jonathan Taylor eclipse 40 total targets since 2022. And the one singular time that Jonathan Taylor broke 50 targets in his career was in 2021 when he was the RB1 overall. When that was the season where he rushed for like 1,800 yards and double-digit touchdowns, then had 50 targets. So he had a floor there from the receiving game as well to match his insane rushing efficiency. That is kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing that again. He's on pace for 50 targets because Daniel Jones is willing to check it down to him. I don't know why other quarterbacks wouldn't have been willing to do that. Same kind of thing with Derrick Henry. Why don't you just give him a couple targets out on the flat and let him do something? Jonathan Taylor's that same way. So because this offense is just so good right now, the offensive line obviously is really good, and we have a quarterback who's willing to check it down to Jonathan Taylor. It's all working. Like this, I seriously think we're seeing 2024 Saquon Barkley in 2025 Jonathan Taylor. So I mentioned it in terms of a redraft standpoint. He was a buy for me in my buy video just because I was like, you have to go buy high on this guy because it's going to be so hard to win without him in your lineup if he's just going to continue to do this for the remainder of the year. If he's seriously going to rush for, almost 2,000 yards, have 20 total touchdowns, have another 3, 4, 500 yards through the air, like if he's going to do that this year, that's going to be impossible to beat unless your lineup is just that absolutely stacked without Jonathan Taylor. So same thing from a dynasty standpoint. If you can go buy him right now, go do it. And pony up your, honestly, the name that just came to my head was, do you trade Ashton Genty for Jonathan Taylor plus, you probably can't get anything greater than a late second at most, and that's just really to age down. But if it was JT in a third for Ashton Genty, would I do that? And I probably would. If I'm competing that much, I would take Jonathan Taylor there and just take the running back production now. That's just the name that came to my head. I'd be curious if anybody's actually able to do that with Ashton Genty. Or if the person with Jonathan Taylor is actually willing to do that. It would take a very special team that has JT that's not winning right now to be willing to do that for Genty. But that's just the situation that came to my head. Daniel Jones is solid. Michael Pittman, he had a bad week too. I think that was a lot of Pat Surtain. But good week 1, good week 2, good week 3. You love to see it. Josh Downs wasn't used all that much just because he wasn't really needed to. Same with Tyler Warren. They didn't really need him because Jonathan Taylor's scoring 3 times on the ground and Michael Pittman caught the receiving touchdown. So they didn't need Tyler Warren. They didn't need Josh Downs, but that doesn't mean that they're still not, solid players. And then depending on Alec Pierce's injury, maybe that helps Downs or Warren or both or Pittman as well a little bit more if that target share is kind of condensed for any games that Alec Pierce may miss. But that's Indy. They're looking incredible right now. As the 2024 version of the Vikings, with JT being the 2024 version of Saquon Barkley. So incredible. I'm buying into this offense for sure. On the Titans side of the ball, Cam Ward is still solid. I think we just have to keep giving him passes because he's a rookie quarterback on a not good team. But he's still solid. There's nothing I've seen from Cam Ward that's, red flags or even yellow flags. He's just a rookie. You're not starting him, but hold on to him if you drafted him, and that's pretty much it. Because I think he can still be really, really good in the future. Tony Pollard found the end zone, so that was great for him, and he had another couple catches, so he gets the job done again with 12 PPR fantasy points, which seems like that's Tony Pollard's range right now. He's not going to get really anything less than that, but he's also not going to get you any more. Classic Frank Gore. Chig Okonkwo had a good performance this week. I would like to see this more as the starting tight end for Tennessee. I would like to see Cam Ward lean on him a little bit more. Gunnar Helm had another couple catches that I was surprised to see that he was getting utilized too. So the tight end position being a safety blanket for a rookie quarterback, we've seen that story often, and I would like to see that volume kind of continue for specifically Okonkwo, but I'm also inspired by the usage for Gunnar Helm as a more long-term option. Calvin Ridley, he's kind of going the Stefon Diggs way where it sucks so much because there's no production. But at least with Calvin Ridley, he's getting the volume. He had 7 targets, 1 reception for 27 yards. So the volume is there that it's not there really for Stefon Diggs, but the volume is there for Calvin Ridley, and it's just not turning into any production. I would hope that something would happen along the lines of giving Calvin Ridley production that him and Cam Ward would figure it out. And that's why I'm still holding out hope for Ridley, but you just can't start him. So if you're still confident in him, or at least, you're still I wouldn't say confident in Calvin Ridley, but if you still kind of believe that there could be an opportunity for him to be better in the future, I would still hold on to Ridley. I don't know anybody that's really buying him right now because he's an old veteran and rebuilders don't want him. He's not producing, so contenders don't really want him. You might just be stuck with Ridley, but at least the volume is there for him to where if they were to start connecting on this volume, he could be pretty good down maybe the second half whenever Cam Ward kind of figures some stuff out too, as he gets more used to the NFL. Those problems aren't really there for Alec Iomanner, who is basically taking over as the wide receiver 1 for Tennessee. He had 4 for 40 and a touchdown this week. I believe he's not the leader in target share. That's still Calvin Ridley, but I believe he's a leader in air yard share. And obviously in fantasy points. I think actually Alec is the rookie wide receiver 2 in fantasy points, and he's only a few fantasy points behind Tedero and McMillan, if I'm remembering that correctly. I can't think of, is there another rookie wide receiver that I'm maybe forgetting? Because Travis Hunter's not doing anything. And it might be him. I think it is. I think McMillan is the rookie wide receiver 1 in fantasy points, and then Alec is the rookie wide receiver 2. I know for sure because I saw it yesterday that Alec is like 5 fantasy points behind T-Mac, but I just can't think if there's another rookie in there or not. But if you drafted Alec in the 3rd or even 4th round of rookie drafts, that is paying out pretty well for you. And maybe that's an opportunity. You probably have to finagle it a little bit, but if you add Stefon Diggs and you wanted to try to get over to Alec, that you'd have to add something to Diggs, but that's one of the targets. I said before, I can't think of anybody to trade off of Diggs for. Alec might be one of them, but you'd have to add to Diggs. But yeah, that's basically Tennessee as well. All right, Houston and Jacksonville, another massively uninspiring game. Houston's offense just continues to suck. I mean, Nico, 8 for 104 and a touchdown. He had a 50-yard touchdown, which was great. So he would have been 7 for 50. He would have gotten there in PPR formats, but the 50-yard touchdown definitely helped his stat line. It's Nico Collins and it's nobody else. I don't want to start CJ Stroud. I've said for months, if not even over a year now at this point, that CJ Stroud has been a sell high for Dynasty forever. And God, I hope you took my advice in the offseason. But I do not want CJ Stroud on my Dynasty team. I especially do not want him in my starting lineup. The only player that you can start from this team right now is Nico Collins. Christian Kirk had 8 targets, so that could be something that's interesting. If you wanted to move off of Stefon Diggs and move over to Christian Kirk, they're kind of two not really productive. I mean, Kirk hasn't played, but at least Kirk is getting some of the volume that Stefon Diggs doesn't seem to be doing right now. So if you wanted to try to re-roll the dice on a aging veteran wide receiver who you could have as your wide receiver 4 or 5 on a contender, maybe you try to move Diggs for Kirk, or you could try to move Diggs for one of the rookies in Houston as well, Higgins or Knoll, because they're not doing anything either. Nick Chubb is fine, but he's not doing anything for you for fantasy. Woody Marks is getting more carries and more snaps. I believe his snap share has basically doubled every single week. It went from like 12 to 24 to almost like in the 40s, I think, this week. So Woody Marks is getting more and more involved. Maybe if you had Stefon Diggs and you wanted to go to Woody Marks, you could do that. That could be something that could work. Again, I'm just trying to find these targets for trading Stefon Diggs away. But Houston is just sucks, man. I don't want to talk about them anymore. Outside Nico. I love me some Nico. Keep buying Nico. The Jaguars, though, aren't any better. Lawrence didn't throw a touchdown, only threw a pick. ETN was fine. He got the volume, but didn't do much with it. Scored a touchdown. Bashal Tutin scored a touchdown. Brenton Strange and Parker Washington continue to lead this team in terms of receptions and yards. BTJ had the 46-yard reception at like the end of the game, so that was good. But then if he didn't have that catch, then he would have had 1 catch for 9 yards on 5 targets. Travis Hunter, 1 for 21. I mean, this offense is so frustrating, and I wanted to believe that Shane Waldron wasn't going to have an impact on this team because Liam Cohen was there. And so I was like, oh, dude, Cohen is going to mask any of the Shane Waldron issues. Like, Waldron was the actual play caller, offensive coordinator for Seattle and Chicago. Whereas, yes, he's coming in here. I think he's the offensive coordinator for Jacksonville still. But Liam Cohen was there. Liam Cohen's going to call plays, and it's going to be fine. He's going to be like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan or Mike McDaniels, any of those kind of, play calling head coaches. And the offensive coordinator is really going to have an issue. But I'm wondering if Shane Waldron is holding back BTJ and Travis Hunter. And if that's the case, they're going to have phenomenal 2026s. But boy, does it suck. I've continued to buy Brian Thomas Jr. I am panicking on him, like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being like I'm insanely panicked about Brian Thomas Jr. For the 2025 season, I am probably at like a 6.5 for panicked for Brian Thomas Jr. Because the volume is still relatively there, but they're just not connecting. It's kind of like Calvin Ridley, where Trevor Lawrence just is not connecting with Brian Thomas Jr. So that's why, like, I'm still believing that maybe they could find a connection and the volume could actually translate into production. So that's why I'm only at a 6.5 out of 10 on the panic scale for 2025. From Dynasty, my panic scale is like at a 1. I'm not concerned about it for Brian Thomas Jr. long term. He's a player, and if you're rebuilding, I think he's a fantastic trade target right now for rebuilders. To flip some of these more win now pieces and try to go get Brian Thomas Jr. from somebody who is really hardcore panicking. And is still competing, and their team isn't being dragged down by BTJ not producing. So I still love buying Brian Thomas Jr. for the long term. I still love buying Travis Hunter for the long term. He's also being dragged down by I don't think he's being used correctly at all, which is probably a Shane Waldron issue. That was the same issue that we had with JSN and Rome Odunze, is that the usage for them just did not match their skill set whatsoever. And then once they finally got used right, then they started producing. So I will continue to buy Travis Hunter as well. And maybe he's a guy that if you had T. Higgins and somebody has Travis Hunter, maybe you could trade T. Higgins for Travis Hunter plus, or Davante Adams for Travis Hunter plus, something like that. Just try to see what you can do with this Jaguars offense, because they need to shake it up at the quarterback position. They need to fire Shane Waldron, and they need to get the ball back to their 2 first-round talents that they effectively gave up 3 first-round picks for in BTJ and Travis Hunter, and stop with Parker Washington and Brenton Strange. Or don't really start. You don't need to stop with Brenton Strange. And Parker Washington's a good wide receiver 3, but to have them be the leaders of your receiving room through 3 weeks with effectively 3 first-round picks invested into your top 2 wide receivers, that is an indictment on this coaching staff and the offensive philosophy as a whole. But as a Penn State fan, I love to see it with Brenton Strange and Parker Washington. But for fantasy football, it's absurd. On to the Falcons and the Panthers game. This game was there was a lot of kind of blowouts or just really bad matchups this week, where the Panthers just absolutely obliterated the Atlanta Falcons. And there was nothing that Atlanta could really do. I mean, Michael Penix does not look good at all. And he's dragging down Drake London. He's kind of dragging down Darnell Mooney. He's dragging down Kyle Pitts is kind of getting it done just a little bit, just because he's a tight end. 4 for 40 for a tight end is not bad. Bijan got it done because he had 8 fantasy points through the air, so 15 fantasy points total on 18 touches. If that's the worst game that Bijan Robinson has all year, you're going to be extremely happy. I would have liked to have seen him find the end zone. I would have liked to have seen any Atlanta Falcon in the end zone, but we did not get it. Drake London continues to be a buy low. I'm not worried about it from this standpoint. I think Michael Penix just needs a lot of figuring out to do. I really wouldn't be shocked. This is kind of the same when I was talking about Carson Wentz, maybe getting a little bit longer of a leash just to let J.J. McCarthy kind of figure some things out. I would not be shocked if they bench Michael Penix in favor of Kirk Cousins as well, just to kind of get Kirk Cousins some utilization based on the salary that they're paying him. But then also to give Michael Penix a little breather and just be like, hey, settle down, figure it out, be the franchise quarterback we drafted you to be. And that might be good for Drake London, Mooney, maybe Pitts. Bijan's outside of all that stuff. He's just going to be fine every single week regardless. But I wouldn't be shocked if they decide to bench Penix in favor of Cousins for a couple of weeks here. And that might be good for the receiving room for Atlanta, kind of like how Wentz was good for Hawkinson and Jefferson this week. We just didn't see enough of it because they blew out Cincy. Which kind of was the same thing here. We just didn't see enough of their receiving game because they all got benched because they were getting blown out. On the Panther side of the ball, they really didn't need to do much. I mean, they were up almost instantly and just held that lead the entire time. Chuba was fine. Rico got the goal line touchdown. Bryce Young had the early inside the 10 or inside the 5. I think it was a 4-yard rushing touchdown for Bryce Young. So 2 inside the 5 touchdowns vultured away from Chuba, who continues to lead this backfield in touches. And I think Rico's usage was just more the fact that they were up 30-0. So they just kind of gave Chuba a little bit of a breather. But I mean, Carolina didn't need to be used, which was a really weird thing to say, that none of the receiving options needed to really be used this week. Ted McMillan still had 8 targets, which was good. But I mean, it was just a bad week because they just won 30-0. So there's not really much more you can take away from this outside of it was just a random blip on the radar. Oh, now we get into a fun game. Now we get into the Rams-Eagles. This game was wild to watch with a blocked field goal at the end that made the Eagles cover, and just the other blocked field goal beforehand so that the Rams wouldn't go up by a touchdown. Oh my gosh, it was just, this game was incredible, dude. And to make matters even better, the Rams went up so quickly that it forced Philadelphia to actually throw. Which blows my mind. Hey, Jalen Hurts is a good passer. He can get the job done through the air. You know why? Because you have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and even Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley are not even bad options as the third or fourth options on your team. But when you have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and a quarterback that is competent like Jalen Hurts in throwing the ball, you can win through the air. News alert to Philadelphia and their offensive system and offensive coordinator. Throw the ball. This is what happens. A.J. Brown looked phenomenal. Devonta Smith looked phenomenal. Dallas Goedert had that long touchdown. You know, just throw the ball, man. Good things happen when you throw the ball to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. And maybe you don't need to be so run heavy in the future. I mean, the tush push is still going to work. Saquon Barkley, you're not going to stop giving touches to Saquon Barkley in the sake of throwing the ball, but you can be more balanced. You can win through the air. And I was so encouraged to see this kind of game because I'm hoping that this kind of game, while it felt forced upon them because of how quickly the Rams were able to score on them and how effective their running game was as well, and then just Puka and Davante Adams were just killing them. So it's similar to like how the Bills passing game in week 1 was brought on because they were just losing to Baltimore. And Philadelphia is not going to be running into a ton of opponents that are going to be able to score on them like that. But I'm hoping that it could mean that they're just a little bit more comfortable letting Jalen Hurts throw the ball, 28 to 30 times a game instead of like 20. And then those targets get fed down to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and then that's just good things for them to where they're still going to have bad games. Brown and Smith are still going to have bad games, but maybe instead of their bad games being like 1, 2, 3 fantasy points, it's more like 5, 6, 7 fantasy points as like their more floor. And then you get the peak games of 20 plus fantasy points from them in matchups like this, where they actually have to play a good opponent. So they play Tampa Bay next week. The Eagles do. So I'm curious to see, they're another good run defense that could maybe be a little bit more of a pass funnel. And they have a really good offense, obviously. So if they're going to be able to score on Philly, and then Philly needs to throw a little bit more, I'd be curious to see if A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith can keep this up heading into week 4 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I'm not making any moves off of this game, but I just love to see it from somebody who has A.J. Brown in a lot of leagues. So that's pretty much it. On the LA Rams side, Matthew Stafford, basically, like, he wasn't all that efficient with it. They're running the ball a lot and doing really well with it. Like, Kyron had almost 100 yards rushing on 20 carries. Corum was averaging 6.6 a carry. Every single time I looked, I was basically looking, I was like, oh, Hunter Henry caught a pass, and then I'll move over to the Rams game, and Kyron Williams or Blake Corum rushed for 8 yards. I don't know which one it is because they both look identical, and their numbers are 22 and 23, and you don't know which one it is until you see the name on the back or you see the second number on the 20-something number. So I just see, the Rams are running for 8 yards carry. Personally, I hope that's Kyron because I have Kyron in a couple leagues, but no, that was Blake Corum. Oh, that one was Kyron Williams. So that was kind of how the game went for me, flipping between the two, watching at the sports bar. Or I would just look up and Puka Nacua just had another catch, and that was pretty much it. Puka, I think, is in conversation for being the Dynasty wide receiver 1. I think he solidified himself. Not only is he a top 5 Dynasty wide receiver, but a top 3 Dynasty wide receiver right now, at least with how the performances for Jefferson, Lamb, and Lamb got hurt, but Jefferson and Chase specifically. I think Puka, man, if he can keep this up, I know the injuries have been a little bit of an issue, and hopefully by me saying it, knock on wood, doesn't jinx him or anything, but if Puka's doing this every single week, I don't care about Matthew Stafford's age whatsoever. Puka is just so freaking good, man, that if you bought into him this year I had him as a tier 1 Dynasty wide receiver for the past 2 years, essentially, or at least a year and a half. But I know some people weren't there yet with Puka, and they were especially a little bit worried about the Stafford stuff, and then Stafford had his back injuries all August. So if you're able to buy into Puka Nacua, because of any of that, for any sort of a discount as the wide receiver 7, 8, 9 in Dynasty instead of the wide receiver 3, good on you, because he is just so freaking good. Still has not scored a receiving touchdown either, and he's a fantasy wide receiver 1. He scored a rushing touchdown last week, but fantasy wide receiver 1 right now. Davante Adams is really good as well. Davante, I think, is a great contender buy target right now, that if you have somebody like a T. Higgins, I think T. Higgins is a great option, that if you're contending and you wanted to sell him for Davante Adams plus, I would do that. I'd be a little bit more hesitant to sell BTJ or Ladd or any of those kind of Drake London, the underperforming back end wide receiver 1s in Dynasty for Davante Adams plus. It would have to be a pretty hefty plus on his side just because of the age discrepancy between them. But I think Davante Adams highlights a very good buy opportunity for contenders because he is getting a ton of targets. He has scored twice in 3 games. And he still doesn't have a full connection with Matthew Stafford right now. His reception percentage is actually really low. His yards per reception is a career high right now. He's averaging over 16 yards per reception, which is a career high for Davante Adams, and that is significantly higher than what it's been for the past couple of years with the Jets and the Raiders. So he's in a great situation, even as a wide receiver 2 behind Puka, but that kind of helps him because defensive attention is going towards Puka. Offensive attention is going towards Puka. Puka's getting 15 targets a freaking week. But Adams is also getting, 8 to 10 targets as well every single week. And he's scoring, making big plays. And he was even missed a couple of times in this Eagles game. He should have had a way better game, but Stafford missed him by a foot on a 40 or 50 yard post route over the middle. He missed him a couple of times inside the 10 on what could have been maybe another touchdown or 2. Missed him on a kind of end zone fade route where Stafford, I think, tried to throw a back shoulder, but it ended up being more right here instead of over here, and so the defender got on it. I think it was either DeJean or Blankenship maybe for Philly, one of the exciting whites, but they were able to get to defend the play, and if that was thrown more out here towards the sideline as an actual back shoulder, Adams probably would have made that catch, and that would have been a touchdown. So Adams' day could have been a lot better. And I think because it could have been a lot better and because so much attention is going towards Puka right now in his production, I think Davante Adams is a very solid contender buy right now as a wide receiver. I mean, he's a wide receiver 14 in fantasy. So go buy Davante Adams because he's still really freaking good. And if you need that production because of injuries or underperforming young guys, Adams is your guy. Jets and Buccaneers. Man, the Jets almost won this game in that Aaron Glenn dance. Every time I see it on my social media feed, I gotta just watch it, especially whenever they have Earth, Wind, and Fire thrown in behind them too. It's so good. But Tyrod Taylor, I'm not surprised if he continues getting starts as well. They're not winning games, but I don't think they would win this game with Justin Fields either. They go back to Justin Fields, I think, but I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor gets another start or 2. And then they go back to Fields or whatever, or Taylor starts a game, doesn't look good, then they go back to Fields and Fields is a starter. But I mean, he targeted the crap out of Garrett Wilson, and that's pretty much it for this game. That's pretty much it for the Jets side of the ball. I mean, Brees, he's another guy that if you have him and you were kind of hoping that he would do better this year, or based on his week 1 performance would be really good. but then he hasn't. Maybe that's where you go buy like a Jalen Warren type of player to substitute in for Breece Hall. Maybe Breece is the type of player that you try to springboard off of, and you can move to a James Cook, you can move to a Jonathan Taylor. You're going to have to add something substantial to do that, but it might be something that's worth your while if you're able to make that happen. Because he hasn't been horrible. The volume is still kind of there for the most part, and the receiving volume is there too, but it's just the Jets are bad. That's pretty much it. And when you have the opportunity to throw 13 times to Garrett Wilson, you're going to do that. And that's pretty much it. Wilson, I think, is still a sell. I just don't want. I don't like having Jets players on my team, and I think Garrett Wilson, with his inconsistencies, great week 1, bad week 2, great week 3. If that continues to ping pong, that's just where we're at with Garrett Wilson. Targets have never been the issue. It's just always been, can that offense be good enough, and can the target quality be good enough? And then that's just what happens with Garrett Wilson. On the Buccaneers side of the ball, Mike Evans actually got hurt in this game, so I think some people are saying that he's going on IR. Actually, I might have actually just seen. I did 20 minutes ago. Breaking news: Mike Evans is expected to miss multiple weeks because of the hamstring injury that he suffered on Sunday. It isn't as bad as last year's, which sidelined him for 3 games, but he is expected to be out for a couple of games. So you're not going to have Mike Evans for a couple of weeks, and they do play Philly. So that may or may not be good for Puka if he's getting more defensive attention from Philly, but he's the wide receiver 1 for the team. Honestly, I think Sterling Shepard is a sneaky start this week. I've already got him marked down for my sneaky start video on 444 at John Paulson. So Shepard, if he's on your waiver wires and then you want to throw him in, I'm not opposed to that, honestly. Bucky continues to get just an absolute boatload of volume and has not really done much on it yet, but I think will as the season continues to go on. And Rachaad White is actually still a really solid handcuff just because Bucky's getting so much opportunity, and we saw his body kind of give up a little bit last year, and he's a smaller back, so you do fear for injuries a little bit more with a running back of his stature. So Rachaad White, I think, is a very good throw-in as a handcuff option that you're like, hey, I need some running back depth for the remainder of the year. And instead of just going and straight up buying somebody that's actually producing, maybe you want to take a shot on buying Rachaad White as a handcuff. Not to say that you're hoping for a Bucky Irving injury, but if that were to happen and you get 1, 2, 3 games out of Rachaad White as a starter who can then just fill in for Bucky in this kind of a role. And we know Rachaad White can do well with the volume. We've seen it already. That that would be a good way to just kind of keep your team moving throughout bye weeks and through other injuries and stuff. So I think Rachaad White is a really good add-on to bigger trades, whether you have Bucky or not, just as a really good handcuff option. But I mean, the Tampa's fun because the guys are the guys on here in a good way. Like, it's just like you just know who the good guys are, and you're going to start them every single week. I don't know if Chris Godwin will be back this week. It sounds like they're eyeing more the beginning of October. So week 4 might just really be Puka and Sterling Shepard, and then maybe a lot of Rachaad White and Bucky Irving through the air. Maybe Cade Otton is back next week too. I'm not sure. But that may or may not be a good thing against Philly. I don't think you can sit Puka just because of the Philly matchup, because he's going to be without Evans. But yeah, you just start the guys. Vegas and Washington. The Vegas side is relatively easy. They got absolutely shellacked, and Trey Tucker caught all 3 of the touchdowns, which I don't think is indicative of literally anything. I do think it's interesting, though, because week 3 last year was the week that Juwan Jennings had his 40 bomb, and then kind of continued to do well in a more depleted wide receiver room for a solid quarterback. Maybe Trey Tucker could do something like that. They do have kind of a depleted wide receiver core, especially with Brock Bowers' kind of knee injury hampering him a little bit. Jacoby Myers is solid, but isn't going to be, anything elite or anything like that. Not to say that Trey Tucker is going to grow into anything elite either, but maybe Trey Tucker could be this year's Juwan Jennings, who had a week 3 massive 40 bomb breakout, and then just continues to kind of be solid for the remainder of the year as more of the wide receiver 2 for Geno Smith in a bad offense where they're going to have to throw more than they probably want to. You could keep an eye on that, see what happens with Trey Tucker. Maybe he's somebody. Trey Tucker might be somebody that if you wanted to trade Stefon Diggs for Trey Tucker, maybe that's an option for you just to see if something like that actually happens. But outside of that, man, I mean, you start Jacoby Myers, you start Brock Bowers, nothing else really. Maybe you start Geno Smith depending on matchups, but there's nothing really else there to say. From the passing game, Ashton Jeanty, I know is a major story. 17 carries for 63 yards. That might be a career high at this point. I don't know if he has a game over 60 yards prior to this one. Doesn't have any targets, which blows my mind. I don't know why they're not using him in the receiving game and why, Zamir White and Dylan Labe are getting 3 total targets, especially when Michael Mayer's not on the team, or he's on the team, but he's injured. But I don't understand why you're not using Ashton Jeanty more. It's kind of like the Cincinnati Bengals thing where I was just talking about with Chase Brown. It's just all of that's going over to Jeanty because Jeanty is the other running back who currently has negative rushing yards before contact. I believe the stat line is that he has 145 rushing yards after contact, and he has 143 total yards on the season. So I said those numbers correctly, by the way. He has more rushing yards after contact than he does total rushing yards on the season. So wrap your brain around that one, but that's just where we're at with Jeanty. That offensive line is absolutely horrible, and it's not Ashton Jeanty whatsoever because you see the plays where he gets like a well-blocked play. He's rushing for 7-8 yards. Like the talent just screams off the page whenever you watch Ashton Jeanty actually able to do something. It's just more often than not, he's not able to do something. So I think Jeanty, I've seen some people, they've messaged me and they said, hey, I was offered, a first and a second for Ashton Jeanty. Should I take it? And I said, yes, absolutely buy Ashton Jeanty for a first and a second. There's people out there panicking on him right now that they're like, oh, my 101, the next Saquon Barkley that was promised to me is not producing. It's only been 3 games, and none of this is because of Ashton Jeanty's performance. Like they think he's like Trent Richardson 2.0 or something like that, and that's just not the case at all. So absolutely buy low on Ashton Jeanty. But if you had Jeanty and you're competing, as I mentioned with that Jonathan Taylor trade, or if you can move over to Gibbs or Bijan or somebody like that, like I'm not opposed to those kind of moves for Jeanty if you are competing. But more often than not, I think the teams that drafted Jeanty were because you had the 101 because you're bad. And I would just continue to hold Ashton Jeanty unless you wanted to sell him for more future picks because one Ashton Jeanty is just not going to make your team better overnight. So it's a little bit of a nuance there. But I am more on the buy Ashton Jeanty side than anything. The Washington side, Mariota got the start this week instead of Jaden Daniels, so he had a rushing touchdown. McNichols had the 60-yard rushing touchdown. Chris Rodriguez got used a lot at the beginning. JCM had a goal line touchdown. McLaurin was kind of fine. They didn't throw a lot because they just slacked the Raiders. So McLaurin didn't do much. Ertz didn't do much. McCaffrey caught a touchdown. McLaurin did leave with a quad injury, so take note of that. Debo didn't do much. My only takeaway from this is just sell Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I got some flack from saying that a week or two ago, but I don't think JCM is anything, and especially if he's going to be now in a 3-headed backfield with McNichols and Chris Rodriguez, and even Debo Samuel's getting a couple bit of receiving work. Like JCM is just so much of a jag in my opinion because he's a nothing in the receiving game, and he's in a 3-headed committee, and they're possibly a 3.5-headed committee with Debo Samuel in the rushing game. He's just, not to say that he's not good, I just don't think that he's going to be anything. He's not their long-term back. They're going to draft somebody next year probably in a pretty good running back class again in 2026 if all of these guys declare. I would still be selling JCM for a 2nd-round pick. That's just me personally. And then I would use that 2nd-round pick to go buy somebody else. So I'm not a JCM fan, and this game was more in my favor than the JCM fans out there favor. Packers and Browns. I don't know how Cleveland won this game, dude. It was so frustrating. Jordan Love did not look good. Josh Jacobs did not look good. Golden, for some reason, ran out of bounds. He should have had a 90-plus yard touchdown, and for some reason just ran out of bounds on his wide open catch down the sideline. So I don't know what's going on there. Jacobs got a ton of passes, so that's good. And maybe that is more of the takeaway for Green Bay here is that with the absence of Jaden Reed, that is actually a good thing for Josh Jacobs to get more receiving work in the short areas of the field as Golden kind of extends the defenses and Tucker Kraft's over the middle and Dobbs is on the outside. Maybe that opens things up a little bit more for Josh Jacobs over the middle of the field as a dump-off option for Love. So I'll have to keep a note on that. Not to say that you're buying or selling Josh Jacobs at all. I would still be buying Josh Jacobs. But you can't take away much from this Green Bay team because I think Cleveland's defense is really, really good. And that's going to be an issue for fantasy football because they shut down Cincinnati in week 1. They shut down Derrick Henry in week 2, got absolutely throttled by Lamar Jackson. But all of those touchdowns in week 2 for Lamar went to guys that we don't even start. They went to Tez Walker and Tylan Wallace. So it wasn't helpful for fantasy unless you had Lamar last week. So Lamar's the only person who's actually done anything on Cleveland. So they shut down Cincy, shut down Derrick Henry, shut down Green Bay. Cleveland's defense is really, really good. And the Packers defense is really good too. That's why, Cleveland wasn't doing anything special either. Njoku got there through PPR volume. Fannin was not great. Tillman wasn't great. Judy wasn't great. Judkins was great. 18 for 94 and a touchdown and then caught another pass on 2 targets. Jerome Ford just continues to be used as the pass catcher, which is fine. And Sampson didn't do all that much either. But Judkins, man, I mean, you want to talk about a running back who is going to gain a lot of value. It is Quinshon Judkins, just because he's a rookie. He lost a lot of value because of all the legal troubles in the summer. But now, even if he does get suspended for a game or 2 or 3 or whatever, I don't think that's going to matter whatsoever because he is their workhorse. And he looked phenomenal, has looked phenomenal for 2 weeks in a row. And if you held tight to Judkins or you bought low on him in the offseason because of the legal stuff, congratulations, dude, because he looks like he could be a top 10 dynasty running back right now. I will be having a mid-season rankings update video stretch. So we'll see where I actually end up putting Judkins in there based on his production over the next few weeks. But man, I mean, it's going to be hard not to have him at least as a dynasty RB1, if not even potentially a top 10 dynasty running back, because he looks really good, man. He looks so good. I would just love to see him get some more receiving work, but that's like my only knock on him. He looks so good. Broncos and Chargers. The Chargers side of the ball is easy. Justin Herbert's great. Start him every week. Keenan Allen's great. Start him every week. Quentin Johnston, low-key might be a buy and should be a guy that you start every single week. And Ladd McConkey, I think Ladd McConkey is in the buy low if you are rebuilding. I'll even buy low if I'm contending as well, just to maybe see if things get better throughout the remainder of the year, but then obviously better next year. Because I think Ladd McConkey isn't, going away from the Chargers for their long-term plans. I think they just are doing so well right now because they were able to bring Keenan Allen back and it's all phenomenal, and they do kind of ultra each other. And Keenan wins because Keenan is probably a better wide receiver than Ladd McConkey, even still at this age. And Keenan has so much familiarity with Justin Herbert that he's just, this you can't take it away from him. You know what I mean? So Keenan is a phenomenal contender target. Quentin Johnston might be a really good just target in general in trades because he looks really good and he's getting the work and he's getting it done. And that might be something that we need to look forward to for like rookie drafts, because like Quentin Johnston, I think it still can be categorized as a bust if you draft him in the first round of rookie drafts. But now looks, really good because he's not the wide receiver 1 on his team. So maybe there are just players, there's players like that to where they're just not ones in the NFL, which is not necessarily a bad thing as we're seeing right now, but they just have to find certain situations to where, that skill set can really be honed in on. And we're seeing it right now with Quentin Johnston. So I think those of you who faded him like me in rookie drafts, I still think we were right over what happened over the past couple of years, but that doesn't mean that we can't then buy back in, whenever we see situations change. And I think we're seeing that right now with him at this moment. Oronde Gadsden? We're seeing it happen with Oronde Gadsden, hopefully. Hopefully, because I know that Harbaugh loves him, and he is probably their best receiving tight end on this team. And I just really hope that Gadsden can become the starter, because he was one of my biggest rookie my guys, and I just love to see that opportunity. I highlighted him in the waiver wire video that a lot of people said they're like, hey, I have him on my taxi squad. I'd love to see it as well. So hopefully Rondé Gadsden continues to do well. Obviously, the big story for the Chargers this week, though, was Najee Harris's Achilles injury, and then thus Omarion Hampton sees 25 total touches for 130 yards and a touchdown. So the Omarion Hampton ascension might be coming here too. Sadly, because Najee Harris got hurt, I would have liked to have seen Omarion just straight up win over Najee. But hey, sometimes injuries are what vault these guys into bigger roles, and then they just hold on to that role because they do well with that role. And we might be seeing that here with Omarion Hampton, a highly pedigreed, elite rookie prospect drafted in the first round in a really good offense. Those combinations, if you're brewing up a combination, like brewing up a nice potion for you, I don't know where that analogy was going. If you were going to try and create a running back in the lab and give him a perfect situation to throw into, it's Omarion Hampton. By Omarion Hampton. He's great. On the Broncos side of the ball, Bo Nix, man, I did say a few times in the offseason that I had labeled him more as the 2025 CJ Stroud, the rookie quarterback who was great as a rookie, but then would have a lesser year two. I did label that more on Bo Nix, and I got some flack for it, but so far through 3 weeks, I'm coming out on top. Not to say that Bo Nix can't figure it out for the remainder of the year, but so far, man, it just seems like I don't know what he's doing. He's trying to do too much. He's just missing on a few throws. Like, his day could have been so much better. Sutton's day could have been so much better. Mims' day could have been so much better. They're just not connecting on a lot of throws right now. Not to say that, I'm selling Bo Nix, but I said, I remember this very vividly, saying this one time that in a video in the offseason, that I think Bo Nix being ranked at like Dynasty QB 10, 11, 12, I think that's fine. That's probably where I would put him. But I think that is closer to his value ceiling in Dynasty than any of the other rookie quarterbacks. Even Jaden Daniels, who's being valued as like the Dynasty quarterback, like 2 or 3, I thought that he had more potential to gain value, maybe not numerically, but just like intrinsically in value than Bo Nix could. And then obviously, you had Drake May could have ascended a lot, Penix could have ascended a lot, McCarthy could have ascended a lot. All those other rookies had way more value ceiling than I think Bo Nix. I think he was closer. Bo Nix, I think, was the closest rookie quarterback in terms of true long-term Dynasty ceiling already off of his rookie year than all the other rookie quarterbacks. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit here, to where he's going to be fought. I tried to say fine and solid twice, and I changed words twice. He's going to be fine. He's going to be solid. But he just might not be an every week starter at this current moment. Courtland Sutton is great. Good contender buy. Continue to play him. J.K. Dobbins is another really good contender buy. I think he's slightly a step above Jaylen Warren, to where his ceiling is a little bit higher in terms of a weekly play. His ceiling is a little bit higher with the volume that he gets and being in a better offense. But his Dynasty leash might be a little shorter, just because we know we have RJ Harvey behind him. And I mean, we know we have Caleb Johnson behind Jaylen Warren too, but it seems like Johnson's so far behind the 8 ball there that Harvey seems closer to taking over the backfield than Caleb is, even though neither of them seem close to be taking over the backfield. So if you wanted to buy a contender running back, go buy J.K. Dobbins and start him every single week, because he is a fantasy RB1 right now and he looks phenomenal. Seahawks and Saints, not much to say on the Saints side of the ball. The team sucks, and so that's just kind of it. Chris Olave is getting a lot of work right now, and he's getting it done through PPR formats. So he had 15 fantasy points this week because of 10 receptions. He's solid. The usage is there, and he's like a fine buy, but I wonder if he's a guy that I'm still looking to sell because he doesn't have a ceiling. And if you're looking for a way to get out of Chris Olave, now might be a good time, just because he's getting so much volume. And I don't know if the production is going to get any better, because between Rattler and Shuck, I just don't think that the situation is all that great for Olave. Even in a year or two, I don't think that situation gets better, to where if you can use Olave as a springboard just to get to a better, higher ceiling player, I don't mind that. But I also don't mind just chugging along with Olave, because he's getting the volume and he's scoring fantasy points strictly because of that volume. Juwan Johnson, I think, continues to be an every week start for tight ends, unless you have some way better option. But he's another player who's getting it done on volume. And then because he's at the tight end position, it's just even better because he's a tight end. So continue to play Juwan Johnson. Kamara just had a bad game. For some reason, didn't get used in the receiving game. I have no idea why. But he's getting a ton of volume. He's the RB1. Just keep playing Alvin Kamara. You have to drudge through some of these kind of bad games because the Saints suck. On the flip side, for Seattle, Darnold is fine. JSN is insanely elite. So that's great. Kenneth Walker scored twice. They didn't really need to do much just because Kenneth Walker scored twice and then JSN scored and then my guy Torrey Horton scored. So I'm hoping that this game could be the start of a turning point to where we shift away from Cooper Kupp and we're shifting towards Torrey Horton. Don't know if that's actually going to happen anymore over the next few weeks, but I am hopeful that the more Horton looks good, he had a punt return touchdown in this game too. The better that he looks every single week, the more opportunity and usage he'll be getting as a wide receiver, as more of the wide receiver too for JSN. That was the hope that we had when we drafted him in rookie drafts. So hopefully that's kind of coming to fruition because he does look very good. And he's kind of benefiting from being the wide receiver 2B on the Seahawks offense right now behind JSN. But you can't really take much away from this whole entire game just because the Seahawks were up so quickly. New Orleans sucks. But again, for Seattle, the guys are the guys. You start Walker, you start JSN. Darnold's not a bad weekly option as a streamer. And that's pretty much it. And then we'll just keep our eyes on the Torrey Horton situation. All right, Cardinals and Niners game now. Another game that pretty much sucked, even though the Niners were able to move to 3-0 somehow. The Niners side of the ball is actually really easy. Christian McCaffrey is on pace for, I think, no less than 600 total touches. So there's that. If you wanted to buy into Christian McCaffrey, if you believe he'll stay healthy, then I'm all for it because he is just so good. And I don't even know if he scored a touchdown yet. And he's one of two running backs. It's him and James Cook are the only two running backs, I believe, right now who have scored 20-plus fantasy points in PPR formats all 3 weeks. And Christian McCaffrey is phenomenal. Ricky Pearsall, also very good this week. Obviously, Juwan Jennings was not able to play, so a lot of the targets went to Ricky Pearsall's way and Christian McCaffrey's way. And then that's pretty much it. Brian Robinson is the handcuff, I think, still. And then Mac Jones, if you wanted to throw him in there, if Brock Purdy is out again in week 4, then I think that's fine. But, I mean, San Francisco is so easy. It's Christian McCaffrey, it's Ricky Pearsall. When Kittle comes back, then he'll be able to play. When Juwan Jennings comes back, you might be able to consider him. But, I mean, that's pretty much it right now. As for the Cardinals side of the ball, this offense sucks. And I think it sucks even more because of James Conner's obviously season-ending injury. And we may honestly never see him playing in the NFL in a meaningful role ever again. So pour one out for James Conner, perennially undervalued, always fantastic production since he's been in Arizona. And it sucks to see him, I don't want to say go out that way, but, to kind of have that setback hard at his age and where he's at is rough to see. So pour one out for James Conner there. But Trey Benson, obviously, I know a lot of people that I've talked to, they're like, hey, I lost James Conner. Good thing I had Trey Benson. They made it a note to go out and get Trey Benson. So congratulations to them because you have at least a fill-in for your lost James Conner. If you had Trey Benson without having James Conner, then you have yourself, I think, potentially top 15 rest of season fantasy running back. His utilization is going to be phenomenal. His utilization after Conner left was incredible, and his only competition is Amari DeMarcado and Bam Knight, or Zonovan Knight. I think he legally changed his name to Bam. So those are the only two players behind Trey Benson, and I think he's just going to get a lot of volume, and he's looked pretty good this year. On the limited amount of volume that he's already gotten. He averaged over 4 yards per carry here. He was really efficient in week 1 as well. And he can be used in the receiving game. He had 3 catches on 4 targets this week to Connor's 3 catches on 4 targets before he got injured. So I think Trey Benson is going to be a phenomenal rest of season player that if you had him, great. And if not, I mean, if you want to buy into him I wouldn't pay a first round pick for Trey Benson right now, but I think that's the going rate. I talked to somebody yesterday who was able to sell Trey Benson and a fourth for a 2026 first round pick. So I wouldn't pay a first round pick for Trey Benson right now, but I feel like that's around the going rate. Anything less than a first round pick, I think, is a solid buy for Trey Benson for the remainder of the year, the next 14 games, and then heading into next year with James Conner may or may not even be on the team. If he is he all going to be healthy? It could just be Trey Benson's backfield for the next couple of years here, which honestly should be worth like a first round pick. I just don't know if I'm willing to pay that first just yet for him right now. But I do feel like that is more market value for him, that if you wanted to buy in on Trey Benson, you probably should be expecting to pay your late first. But anything less than that, 2 seconds or, honestly, if you want to trade Chase Brown for Trey Benson, that's probably a pretty solid deal on both ends, depending on, maybe it's Chase Brown in a second for Trey Benson in a third or something like that. Could get done. So that's that. As Trey McBride, he scored, so he's great. You're just starting him every single week. Marvin Harrison had a pretty rough game. And for all the people that want to talk about him, dropping touchdowns and whatnot, I don't think enough people give him credit for the touchdown that he did catch in the end zone on like a 40-yard pass that was called back due to a pass interference penalty or a hold penalty or something. There's a penalty on Arizona that called back the play, but Kyler like rolled right and chucked it down there, and Marv had this incredible catch where he had to go up and get it and kind of dive backwards and came down with the ball. And nobody is talking about that except for Hayden Winks from Underdog. And everybody is just talking about all the other miscues from Marvin Harrison. So I think it's just, I was nervous about Marvin Harrison coming into the year. And I still am nervous because this year's not the year. And I think the Cardinals, obviously, they just need a facelift systemically up and down. They need a new coaching staff. They need to move on from Kyler. They need to focus on Marvin Harrison Jr. Marv needs a little bit of work himself, but they just need a top to bottom change everywhere. Until that happens, I'm really worried about Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think he is still buoyed because it's still Marvin Harrison Jr. and the draft capital, and he's only played 20 career games so far. So you can probably still get a decent haul for him or use him to trade up to get to Ladd or BTJ or London or maybe even like a Nico Collins or somebody like that relatively easily, I think. But it's really hard to continue buying into Marvin Harrison Jr. for the remainder of the year. He's a good rebuilding asset, I think, because he's not going to hurt your rebuild, and he has still long-term upside. But until we see anything different, it's just going to be super inconsistent and nothing that you actually want on your team. Bears Cowboys then, obviously the Cowboys side is pretty easy. Dak did not have that great of a game, but he lost CeeDee Lamb on like the first drive because the dude like hip drop tackled him on a rush attempt that didn't even stand. So it just completely sucked to lose CeeDee Lamb that early. As somebody who has CeeDee Lamb in multiple Dynasty leagues, it also sucked as well. Just to see a big old 0 next to him, and then he's going to be out for the next few weeks. So that sucks. In his stead, George Pickens, pretty solid. I wouldn't go out and buy George Pickens, but if you already had him, you're going to get pretty decent production, I think, over the next few weeks. Jake Ferguson, really good tight end production as well. So again, I don't know if I would just go out and strictly buy Jake Ferguson because of this. I do think he's a solid tight end buy if you needed a guy to pay for like a second round pick for, but and he's going to have increased production without CeeDee Lamb, but I wouldn't just go buy these players just because Lamb's out for the next couple of weeks. But I think if you already had them, they're going to be solid for the next few weeks. Javonte looked great. 10 carries for 76 yards and 5 receptions as well. Didn't find the end zone, but he was able to get it done through volume and efficiency. So Javonte is another running back that, if you just wanted to buy just strictly for production, I'm not opposed to it. I wouldn't pay a first for him. I probably wouldn't even pay like an early second. I'd probably try to pay a more mid to late second or mid to late second and like a third or some other more like rebuilding piece or something like that. I'd be fine to do that with Javonte because I think he's going to hold on to this job for a little bit longer too. Like they just continue to healthy scratch Jaden Blue, and unless Phil Maffa comes in and then just looks amazing coming off of the IR, which I would hope for because I love Phil Maffa, but And I don't see how any of that necessarily changes for Javonte Williams. And it's really just going to come down to, as long as he's productive, he's going to have the job. And if you're just going to bet on him being productive as he's been through the first 3 weeks, I mean, he's going to keep that job. So that's where we're at with the Dallas Cowboys. The Chicago Bears, boy, I mean, if we could get them to play the Dallas Cowboys defense every single week, that would be phenomenal. Caleb looked fantastic. Rome should have been, I think, a lot better. He had like that 25-yard touchdown at the beginning, or 35-yard touchdown, maybe it was. That early touchdown, and then just didn't do much after that. Burden had the long touchdown on the flea flicker, and DJ Moore caught the touchdown where he just stood in the back of the end zone, and Caleb found him. Komet caught a touchdown, I think, after Loveland went out. So Rome Odunze is going to be the guy. I think Rome is ascending pretty rapidly to being a top 18, maybe even a potentially top 15 dynasty wide receiver at this point. You love to see Luther Burden getting involved here. I think he's going to take over more for Olamide Zaccheaus over the next few weeks until he's more of a full-time player. DJ Moore seems to be really getting kicked to the curb here. If you wanted to sell DJ Moore just to get off of him now, even as sell low, I swung and missed on him pretty hard. If this is what he's going to do for the remainder of the year, what he's already done for the first 3 weeks. So I apologize for that one. But getting off of DJ Moore, it might be better to do that now than to hope for better production, then not getting better production, and then you lose even more value. It might just be better just to move DJ Moore for like a Jacoby Myers kind of player. Maybe you move over to, I can't even think. Maybe you get Ellick for DJ Moore. You just move over to like Ellick or somebody like that. It's going to be tough because I don't know what the market's going to look like for a player like DJ Moore unless you really sell pretty low, or maybe you go and try and buy somebody like a Brandon Ayuk and try to re-roll the dice on a player like him, or it's a Calvin Ridley, or it's tough if you had DJ Moore, and I'm sorry for advising to buy him because I seem to be wrong right now on that. And then DeAndre Swift, he's continuing to get the volume, so there's that. Kyle Monangai is getting a little bit more workload, but he's not doing much with it. I don't know if Monangai is necessarily all that great. I think we just kind of wanted him to be because we know that Roshan Johnson isn't good and isn't getting used, and we know DeAndre Swift isn't all that good either. So this Bears backfield situation might just be a 2026 rookie running back that I think they wish that they would have been able to draft, and I think Ben Johnson really wishes he was able to draft right now. So. Swift is there from volume, but that's basically it. And that's Chicago. I hopefully they continue. They play Vegas this week, so maybe they can keep the train rolling. And Caleb Williams is actually growing into this new kind of quarterback style that he's never played before in this Ben Johnson offense. And Ben Johnson is actually working Caleb correctly, and he's able to grow from this. So that's the hope moving forward. I'm not buying Caleb Williams just yet, but the future could be bright if we're starting to see him kind of be fixed, especially behind a really, really good offensive line and with some really good weapons around him. All the stuff that we already knew, we just need to see him actually do it. We've seen him do it now, so hopefully he can do this against non-Dallas Cowboys defenses. Last two games of the slate with the Sunday night game here. And it's funny because actually not even like 10 minutes ago from me recording this, the Giants have actually announced that they are benching Russell Wilson in favor of Jackson Dart. So I am super excited. Jackson Dart was by far clearing away my rookie quarterback 2 in this class behind Cam Ward. And I know a lot of people said that he might redshirt. I was of the opinion that he was going to be a starter by early to mid-October. And that even got beaten by him being a starter by week 4. And I think it's really just because Brian Dable is on the hot seat here, and I knew that he wasn't going to turn to Jameis. He was going to turn to his first-round rookie quarterback, Jackson Dart, who looked phenomenal in the preseason. So we're on a Jackson Dart season. He gets the LA Chargers this week, and then the New Orleans Saints next week, and then like 2 matchups against Philly in 3 weeks after that. So, the road is going to be tough for him against really good defenses to where you shouldn't be starting Jackson Dart, but if he starts to produce well against these defenses, which is not out of the question, but if he's, bringing a little bit of rejuvenation into this offense, he's making Malik Neighbors look good again, Wandale look good, All these kind of, maybe he helps Theo Johnson a little bit. If he just brings some swagger into this Giants offense, then I know he's going to, and they start producing well, Jackson Dart is going to climb dramatically in value. We just need to actually see him do that. The one player, though, that did climb dramatically in value already is Cam Skattebo. Tyron Tracy's obviously out for the next few weeks with a shoulder injury, but Skattebo took the reins of this backfield, and it might be hard to take him back when Tracy comes back. And then obviously Devin Singletary is not going to be much of a factor, but Skattebo, 120 yards and a touchdown on 16 touches. I mean, that is incredible production from what we're already seeing. And he didn't even get a ton of rushing volume because the Chiefs were just winning most of this game, so they had to throw a lot. But he's getting utilized out of the backfield, which we know he could have. He was a very good receiver out of the backfield at Arizona State. Wheels up for Cam Skattebo, man. He might be one of the most productive rookie running backs in this class. Even for a day 3 guy, he shouldn't have been a day 3 guy. And I'm willing to invest into Cam Skattebo. If you can still pay like a second or a second and third for him to get on the trade now, I'm still fully in on the future outlook of Cam Skattebo, especially if Jackson Dart makes this offense better. We'll just have to see. Kansas City side, Mahomes is not a phenomenal play every single week. Tyquan Thornton got used a lot this week. 5 for 71 and a touchdown. Juju 4 for 55. Hollywood 4 for 40. Travis Kelce 4 for 26. Pacheco didn't really do much. Kareem Hunt got the one touchdown of like the whole entire game. With Thornton had the other one, but I mean this Chiefs offense is just so uninspiring right now. They really need Xavier Worthy back, and then I'm hopeful that whenever Rashee Rice comes back, that we can get back into being a very high-powered offense, because it does seem like they want to run the ball, but I think they're also kind of getting back into being willing to let Mahomes throw as well. Maybe they're taking a page out of the Chargers playbook with letting Justin Herbert throw, and that's done really great things. They're 3-0 there for LA. So maybe if Mahomes can throw a little bit more once he gets his top 2 weapons back, that could be a good thing. So I'm just hopeful for Rashee Rice really to come back. That's my primary thing here. But until then, I don't think you start really. I mean, you might have to start Mahomes, and you probably have to start Kelce depending on who else you have at tight end. But outside of that, I'm not starting anybody else. This team just kind of is so uninspiring, and it kind of sucks. But that's where we're at. And then the Monday night game from last night when I'm recording this, it was a phenomenal game, super fun to watch. The Lions offense looks like they just want to make sure that everybody knows that their offense is still super high powered, and that week 1 performance was more of a fluke against a great Packers defense. But they want people to know that they are still the Detroit Lions. I mean, David Montgomery, absolutely incredible. Jahmyr Gibbs, incredible. Amon-Ra, incredible. And that's basically the storyline there. Like, I think obviously you're starting Gibbs and Amon-Ra every single week. I think Monty's a pretty solid flex start every single week, especially if he's going to be able to do games like this more often than not. Laporta, you probably just have to start at the tight end position, even though I don't love it. Jameson Williams might be the big conversation here, because this is now 3 weeks. I mean, he had a good week last week against they were against the Dallas Cowboys, I think, last week. Maybe I could be wrong on that, but he had 2 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think JMO has 7 receptions through the first 3 weeks. It's not good usage. And that was my fear, again, that when you lose a coordinator like Ben Johnson, who just made this offense so high-powered and so efficient, that when you lose that, the peripheral weapons are going to be hurt. Because obviously Amon-Ra was going to be fine. Gibbs was going to be fine. Monty, through some usage, and still if he's able to score touchdowns, might be hurt a little bit, but also has been mostly fine. JMO, though, as the number 2 option, and especially if Tesla's getting involved a little bit more too, like, it's a little bit worrisome for Jameson Williams, to where he might be a player that, if you're looking to sell him to a rebuilder as a contender, maybe you could try to move him over to a Rome Odunze before it gets really too late, or move him over to Rashee Rice before he comes back, or Zay Flowers, even though Zay Flowers had a bad game this week. If you can move off of Jameson Williams, or maybe you want a contender piece like a Davante Adams, like a Keenan Allen, or a Quentin Johnston, that might be the directions that you need to go with Jameson Williams, because he is just not producing. And really, outside of a handful of games last year, he has mostly not been super productive either in his entire career. And that's just kind of where we're at with Jameson Williams. I mean, he's going to have games in the future. Like, I'm not saying that he's just a complete bust, but it's so inconsistent and it's so hard to rely on that you might just want to move off of him for a more reliable piece. But that's pretty much it. Detroit looked incredible last night on the back of Monty Gibbs and Amon-Ra. On the Ravens side of the ball, Lamar just continues doing his thing. Derrick Henry lost the fumble at the end of the game. I don't know what makes him turn into Ramondre Stevenson at the end of games to fumble away possessions that they really needed to score on, and then it gives their opponents the ball in like the 30, then they end up scoring, and then the Ravens lose the game and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, he got it done before that. He had that really nice 28-yard touchdown run that he wasn't even touched on. And then just because the Lions ended up scoring quickly, they had to turn to Justice Hill for a lot. And the Lions' rush defense was also really good too. So I don't want to take that away from them as well, that Derrick Henry got it done for the most part. But it wasn't an incredible game that a lot of people necessarily thought he could have in a high-scoring matchup. The Lions' rush defense is generally pretty good. So Derrick Henry's fine. You're just going to have some of these games every now and then. It's not like he killed you either. He had, 12 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points. So he didn't kill you. It just wasn't a 20-plus point Derrick Henry week. Rashad Bateman got a lot of work. Mark Andrews got a lot of work. Zay Flowers didn't do anything, which kind of was weird. I was expecting a big Zay Flowers game after the first 2 weeks and thinking that he was kind of being put into this new usage and role. But I'm wondering if maybe Detroit really tried to take him out, and then that's what left Rashad Bateman open for a lot, and that's what really left Mark Andrews open for a lot. Andrews caught that garbage time touchdown at the end of the game to get them to 30 total points. So I Bateman's a fun best ball guy. I don't know what to do. You're not doing anything with him outside of that. Maybe once bye weeks and more injuries kind of get cooked into here, you might be wanting to start Bateman as a upside flex option if you have to. Flowers is going to be fine. He just had a bad game. As for Mark Andrews, man, I mean, his story is so weird because he's no longer elite. And yet he could still have a game, maybe not obviously have a game like this where you have like 30 fantasy points or whatever. But, when you're looking for tight ends that can score a touchdown more often than not, that is Mark Andrews still in this incredible Baltimore Ravens offense tied to Lamar Jackson. So, Mark Andrews, for as much as people just want to like dog on him and just be like done with him, he's still a better tight end option than a lot of other names out there and is at least a start consideration every single week. I have a team where I have him, Andrews, and Hunter Henry, and I don't really know who to start. Or him. I have Andrews, Hunter Henry, and Jake Ferguson, every single week, and I don't know who to start. I started Mark Andrews the first 2 weeks, and he didn't do anything. Then I benched him this week. He does this, and then I started I didn't have a wrong answer this week because all three tight ends were great. But it's just funny that the 1 week I sit Andrews, he goes off on my bench. But it's just, we have a decent amount of tight ends actually this year. Even though like Bowers isn't doing all that great and Kittle's hurt, Hawk isn't doing anything, Kelsey's not doing anything, but we have, Andrews isn't a bad start. Hunter Henry's pretty solid. Ferguson's pretty solid. Jawan Johnson's pretty solid. Dalton Kincaid has been good in 2 out of 3 games. You've got Njoku or Harold Fannin. There's seemingly a decent number of tight ends out there that at least you feel like you have somebody that you can rely on every single week. And Mark Andrews is definitely one of those guys. So I want to go buy Mark Andrews. If you want to sell him off of this game, then great. But you're going to get games like this from the Baltimore Ravens. So that is going to do it for the week 3 Dynasty lessons learned as we head into week 4 now. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and watching as these videos get really, really, really long. Next week is our last week before bye week. So one more super long week. And then we'll get into bye weeks where a couple of these games are going to be deleted from buys. So I'm looking forward to that one personally. But appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to join the DLF Discord, the DLF YouTube Discord. If you are not, I believe that link is down in the description. We always have people in there asking questions, answering those questions, some stuff like that. So, and I'm in there too. So If you wanted some more personalized advice or anything for your teams, you can jump into the Discord channel or in the comment section of these videos or any videos on the DLF YouTube channel. Or the Friday AMAs are also back as well. I started those again up last week after a couple of other responsibilities for the 4for4 channel. But we're back to doing that every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So join into there if you want some questions answered on the AMA. I went for 2 hours, could have went even longer, but I had a hard out at the 2 hour mark. So we probably could have gone even longer. So I appreciate all the support and everything, guys. Terrible at outros, so we're just going to call it a video. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Appreciate you guys for watching. We'll catch you in the next video. Peace.